All right, guys, so this lesson is from block. It's February 8th and 9th. This is factoring trinomials day 2. Okay, so here we have a warm-up. I'm not going to go through all of these. I'll just go ahead and do one of them. Let's look at number 4. So this is from Tuesday's lesson. So the first thing we want to remember is that we need to look for a GCF first. So I have a 4, 24, and 20. So I notice that my GCF is 4. So I'm going to go ahead and factor out a 4 to start with. So I'm dividing everything by 4. All right, so I'm left with p squared minus 6p and plus 5. Okay, from here, we need to remember to bring this 4 all the way down with us. All right, so I'm going to leave it here, and then I'm going to use my brackets. Now, focusing on what's inside my parentheses, 1 is a, b is negative 6, and c is 5. So I'm going to make my x factor. Remember, on top is a times c, and on the bottom we put our b value. So a times c is going to be 5 times 1, so it's going to be 5 on top, and then b is negative 6. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 5 and add to negative 6. I notice at the top is positive and the bottom is negative. So that tells me I'm going to have two numbers that are negative. Okay, and multiples of 5. 5 is prime, so my only option is 5 and 1. And yes, negative 5 and negative 1 adds up to negative 6. Okay, so negative 5 and negative 1 are my two numbers that I'm looking for. So I'm breaking up this negative 6p into a negative 5p and a negative 1p. All right, so I'm going to bring down my 5 and my p squared. And close off those parentheses. Okay, continuing to bring down my 4 and my bracket, I am now going to factor out my GCF from both terms. And when I do that, or I should say from both binomials, and when I do that, what I'm left with inside my parentheses should match, right? So first, I have a p squared and a p. I know my GCF of p squared and p is just p, right? They have p in common. So I'm going to factor out a p here. What does that look like? Well, I'm dividing both terms by p. So p squared over p is p, and negative 5p over p is just minus 5. Okay, so I want this side to look like p minus 5. Well, I notice I have a negative 1 in front of the p, and I need that to be a positive 1. Then I notice I have a positive 5, and I need a negative 5. So that tells me I need to factor out a negative 1. Okay, so what does that look like? I'm dividing both terms by negative 1. So I'm left with p minus 5 in my parentheses. Okay, and I know I'm good because p minus 5 and p minus 5 are the same, right? When we're grouping, those should be the same. So my answer is going to look like this. I have my 4 on the outside. I just brought that 4 all the way down. I have my matching p minus 5s. And then remember, this p and this negative 1 are what make up my final binomial. So p minus 1. Okay, so that is a review of what we learned on Tuesday. I know we're still a little bit shaky with this. We've only done it for one day. So today we're kind of getting more into it. But now I want us to notice A is not going to be 1 every time. Okay, so if we look at all these examples, I can see A is 3. Here, A is 10. I do want us to notice on number 2, though, we're going to have a GCF. Here, A is 12, 9. Okay, so just like before, we do want to check for a GCF first, and if not, we're going to follow the same process. It's just going to look a little bit different. Okay, so on number 1, I notice that I have 3, 11, and 10, and not every term has an x. So there's no GCF here. So I'm going to go to my x factor. That's kind of big. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. I notice my A is 3, my B is negative 11, and my C is 10. And we've actually seen these numbers before. 30 on top, 3 times 10, and negative 11 on the bottom. We did this on Tuesday. We had 30 and negative 11. So if you remember, we used -6 and -5. Okay, that will multiply to +30 and add up to -11. From here, it's the same process, all right? Now we just have this number in the front, so let's see what we're going to do with that. So I'm breaking up -11x into -6x and -5x. Okay, so putting my parentheses there. Same as before, I bring down my first and last term. So I'm bringing down 3x squared, and I'm bringing down +10. Okay, same as before, we're looking for that GCF, okay, for both binomials. The first binomial I see, I have 3x squared and -6x, 3 and 6. I know my GCF is 3. But I also notice that they both have an x, so I'm actually going to factor out 3x. So let's see what we're left with when we factor out 3x. This is 3 over 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. Remember, we subtract our exponents. So 2 minus 1, I'm left with x to the power of 1. Sorry, let me change colors there. X to the power of 1. And then over here, -6x over 3x is just -2. Okay, x divided by x is 1 whole, so we don't need to write that. All right, so I need this side to match x minus 2. Well, if I just take out a 5, that's going to leave a negative here. And if I divide 10 by 5, that's going to be +2. Notice I need the opposite signs, so I need to factor out a negative. Okay, I need to factor out a -5, not a +5. So I'm going to factor out -5 so that my signs can match inside my parentheses. So if I factor out a -5, I'm dividing both terms by -5. The first term I'm left with x. And the second term, 10 over -5, is -2. Once again, we see what's inside of our parentheses should still match, and it does. So just like we learned on Tuesday, if I were to factor out an x minus 2, if my x minus 2's went away, if I pulled them out, I would be left with this 3x and this -5. Okay? So 3x minus 5. And these can be written in the reverse order. I could have 3x minus 5 times x minus 2. Okay? The order doesn't matter there. All right, so that's that one. I'm not going to go through all of these, so I'm just going to pick a couple. Let's see. I'll go ahead and do number 2 here. So number 2, right off the bat, what stands out to me, I have 10, 45, and 35. I notice these are all multiples of 5. So before I do my x factor, I need to pull out a 5. I need to factor out a 5. Okay, so I'm going to factor out a 5. This is kind of like our warm-up question that I did. That 5 is just going to come down all the way to the end. So I'm dividing everything by 5. So I should be left with 2k squared plus 9k plus 7. We like factoring out a 5. Would you rather work with 10, 45, and 35 or 2, 9, and 7? I would rather work with 2, 9, and 7. Okay, now comes our x factor. A is 2, B is 9, C is 7. So the top is A times C. So I'm going to get 14 on the top. I'm trying to find two numbers that multiply to 14 and add to 9. All right, we don't have many options for 14. We know it's 1 times 14 and 2 times 7. That's my two options. 1 and 14 is not going to give me a 9, but 2 and 7 is. All right, so 2 and 7 are my lucky numbers here. 2 and 7. Okay, so we're going to break up that middle term into 2 and 7. 2k and 7k, I should say. 2k plus 7k. Don't forget your k's. Now I'm going to bring down my first and last terms here. Don't forget this 5. It's got to come all the way down with us. I'm going to put that in. I'm going to put that on the outside and use my brackets so I don't forget it. So I'm bringing down my 2k squared and my plus 7. Okay, now we got a factor. Factoring out a GCF from both of these and just bringing the 5 along. Okay, so here's my 5. I'm going to use my brackets. I have 2k squared and 2k. Well, they both have a 2 in common, and they both have a k in common. So I'm dividing both of these by 2k. Sorry, I didn't leave much space there. All right, so if I divide out a 2k, on the first part, 2 divided by 2 is 1. K squared over k1, remember we subtract. 2 minus 1 is just k. So I'm left with k. 2k over 2k, anything divided by itself is just 1. Okay. The next part, 7k plus 7. They both have a 7, right? So I'm going to factor out a 7. When I do that, divide 7, I'm left with exactly what I need, k plus 1. All right, how do I know I'm good? Well, what's in my parentheses matches. So my final answer, we're bringing that 5 down in front of our parentheses. This one I'll write in the opposite order than the last one just to show you that we can do that. 2k plus 7 and k plus 1. Where did I get 2k plus 7? That's the term we factored out here and the term we factored out here. We put those two together. So 2k plus 7 and k plus 1. Okay, let's just do one more. I'm thinking, I don't know. Let's do number 5. All right, on 5, I have 6, 5, and 4. No GCF there, and the last term does not have a y, so can't factor out a y. All right, A is 6, B is -5, C is -4. The top number is going to be 6 times -4. That's my A times C. And the bottom number is going to be -5. Okay, two numbers that multiply to -24 and add to -5. Well, I know one of them needs to be negative because in order to multiply to a negative number, one has to be negative, one has to be positive. 24, if we're not sure, let's list it out. I know 24 is 1 times 24. That's not going to give me a 5. 2 times 12. That's not going to give me a 5. 3 times 8. Yeah, that can give me a 5. Now the question is, which one needs to be negative? Well, in order to make a negative number, we have to subtract the bigger number. So it should be 3 minus 8. Double check it. Yes, those multiply to -24 and they combine to make -5. Okay, so my two numbers are -8 and 3. So I'm splitting up this -5 into -8y and 3y. Okay, so I'm going to bring down my -4 and my 6y squared. Okie doke, now it's time for GCFs. Looking at this first binomial, I have a 6 and an 8. Those are both even, so I know I can factor out a 2, and they also both have a y, so I'm factoring out 2y. So that means I'm dividing each term by 2y. Okay, we're going to divide our big numbers and subtract our little exponents. So 6 over 2 is 3. y2 over y1 is just y. Dividing over here, -8 over 2 is -4. All right, and y over y is 1. Let me fix that 4, it looks ugly. 4. Okay, over here I have plus, I don't have a GCF between 3 and -4. And I also noticed they already match. But the question is, what number is right here in front of my parentheses? What number is here in front of my parentheses? Well, I know there's an invisible 1 there. Okay, so when what's inside my parentheses already matches, I can use that +1 to get to my answer. So from here, we're going straight to the answer. We have 3y plus 4 is what, minus 4 is what they have in common. And then we have 2y plus that invisible 1. Okay.